He had just taken off the uniform. He had just crossed the gates of the military base. But before Jungkook of BTS could even take a breath as a free man, a nightmare began. Not just for him, but for his mother. Only hours after completing his mandatory military service in June 2025, Jungkook found himself at the center of a disturbing incident when a Sasaeng, an obsessive fan, was caught trying to break into his home. What was supposed to be a private, emotional reunion with his family turned into a traumatic and dangerous confrontation with obsession. But this time, the victim wasn't just Jungkook. IT was his mother. According to unconfirmed but widely circulated reports on South Korean forums and fan pages, Jungkook's mother was at home during the attempted break-in. Though security intervened in time and the Sasaeng was arrested, the emotional shock it delivered to the family was irreversible. "My son just came home, and they already attacked his house." These were the alleged words of Jungkook's mother, now circulating like wildfire across Korean and international fandom spaces. While HYB Labels has not officially released a detailed statement beyond confirming the arrest and assuring safety protocols, insiders are painting a very different, more personal picture, one of fear, exhaustion, and deep violation. This isn't the first time Jungkook has pleaded with fans to respect boundaries. In December 2023, months before his enlistment, he publicly asked fans not to send food or gifts to his personal address, warning that he would take legal action if his requests were ignored. "Please don't cross that line," he wrote. "Even if it comes from love, it hurts." And now, just as he re-enters civilian life, those words have come back with horrifying clarity. His return was meant to be a symbol of peace, of healing. Instead, it has become a painful reminder that some people still refuse to see K-pop idols as human beings. The K-pop world often talks about fame, talent, and perfection, but rarely about what it takes from the families behind the stars. Jungkook's mother has stayed out of the spotlight for most of her son's career, offering unwavering support from the background. But this week, the shadows caught up with her. Sources close to the family say she's now fearful of staying alone. There are whispers of her urging Jungkook to consider relocating, to leave Seoul, to find peace, to escape the invisible prison that fame has become. She was already anxious every time he traveled, one anonymous acquaintance shared. But this broke her. The Sasaeng phenomenon, once seen as fringe behavior, is now recognized as a growing threat to celebrity privacy in South Korea and beyond. What used to be dismissed as extreme fan love is now classified by many as stalking and harassment, with real psychological and legal consequences. Jungkook's case is just the latest in a string of incidents that underscore one hard truth. K-pop idols are not safe, even in their own homes. More disturbingly, this incident has reignited global conversations about the mental toll celebrity takes not just on the stars, but on their families who live in fear behind the curtains of glittering stages. AS armies flood social media with messages of support. Many are also demanding accountability. Why wasn't there tighter security the day of Jungkook's return? Why are Sasaeng still able to get so close, despite years of warnings? Some fans believe this is a turning point, that it's time for the industry to stop glorifying obsessive fan culture and start treating it for what it is, a violation of human dignity. At the time of writing, Jungkook has not made a public statement about the incident. He remains silent, perhaps processing the pain, perhaps shielding his mother from further media chaos. But the silence speaks louder than any post, because when a man cannot come home in peace, when even his mother cannot sleep without fear, it's no longer about fandom. It's about basic humanity, and in that silence, we hear the quiet grief of a mother who gave the world her son, only to find that the world wasn't ready to give him peace in return. The hours following the incident were filled with chaos behind closed doors, but outside, the world only saw silence. There were no press conferences, no shaky phone videos from Jungkook, no Weverse post explaining the trauma his family had just endured. And yet, that silence, that void of words, said more than any headline could. It was the silence of exhaustion. The silence of a family who had already given too much. The silence of a son who had spent 2 years in the service of his country, only to come home and realize he would have to continue fighting, but this time, not in uniform, not with comrades, but alone, against a faceless, obsessed crowd. Fans flooded social media with outrage, support, and fear. Hashtag Protect Jungkook trended globally. Armies from all corners of the world began demanding answers from HYB, from Korean law enforcement, from anyone who held even a sliver of responsibility. But amid the digital firestorm, the most heartbreaking voices were the softest. The fans who remembered that behind the artist was a family, and behind the legend was a boy who once said his mother was his biggest inspiration. What must she have felt, sitting in that home, hours after welcoming her son back from nearly 2 years of absence, only to see a stranger trying to force their way into his life? Into their life? The terror is hard to imagine. For a parent, there is no greater fear than the inability to protect your child. But for Jungkook's mother, that fear is complicated. Because how do you protect someone the entire world believes they own? There are no security systems strong enough to keep out the entitlement of obsession. No number of bodyguards can block the psychological intrusion that Sasaengs inflict. And no parent, no matter how strong, can ever prepare for the moment when their child, who's already given everything, comes home only to be robbed of peace once again. This incident wasn't just a violation of privacy. It was a violation of sanctuary. Jungkook's home, supposed to be his place of rest, of safety, of healing, became another stage. But this time, the cameras weren't welcome. The audience was uninvited, and the performance was no longer voluntary. IT forces us to ask a difficult question. When will it be enough? What more must idols lose before the world accepts that their humanity is not a fantasy to consume, but a truth to protect? For years, fans have romanticized access. Candid photos, leaked addresses, schedule leaks, airport stalking, all brushed off as fandom culture. But now, as one mother wipes tears in a darkened room, as one son locks his doors not out of paranoia but survival, we see the cost. This is not the first time, and sadly, it may not be the last. But it should be the moment we stop pretending that love and obsession look the same. That being a fan means entitlement. That public figures lose the right to boundaries once they step into the spotlight. Jungkook did not sign up to be a prisoner in his own home. His mother did not raise a global star to see him chased even after the cameras stopped rolling. And now, in the wake of this disturbing event, their silence is not just personal. It is powerful. It is a protest, a plea, a quiet scream that the world should finally hear. Let Jungkook rest. Let his mother breathe. Let the house behind that gate be a home again, not a target. Because if this is the price of fame, then it is too high. And if this is what love looks like, then we must learn to love better. The uniform is off. The stage is empty. The doors are locked. But the wounds are still fresh. And somewhere in the quiet corners of Seoul, a mother sits by the window, hoping that this time, when her son walks through the door, he can finally stay, not just safely, but in peace. That is not too much to ask. That is not a fantasy. That is the bare minimum. And for Jungkook, for the boy who gave the world so much light, it is time we all helped him reclaim his own. Not as an idol, not as a performer, but as a son. One who deserves to come home without fear. In the days that followed, the world moved fast. News cycles continued. Entertainment outlets picked up the Sasaeng story, treated it as a scandal, a headline, a trend. But within the walls of Jungkook's home, the air hung heavier than ever. The sound of the front gate creaking, a shadow across the security camera feed, the whisper of a mother asking her son if he's all right, even though she knows he isn't. These are the moments the world doesn't see, because they aren't designed to be consumed. They are lived in silence, behind walls, behind guarded hearts that are too used to being cracked open for public view. Jungkook's mother, whose face the public rarely sees, has never sought attention. She didn't ask to be the mother of a global icon. She didn't raise her son for applause. She raised him to be kind, to be strong, to chase what he loves. But now, with her son home and the door to that home nearly shattered, literally and symbolically, what is left of that dream? She likely never thought her greatest fear would be her son's fame. He gave the world his youth, his voice, his body, and his soul. She gave the world her child. And now, the world has grown so greedy that it has come clawing at their doorstep, not asking for music or autographs, but for proximity. For possession, there's a cruel irony here, that after fulfilling one of the most sacred duties in Korean society, military service, Jungkook returned to find that his own society could not protect him from the one thing that has always hunted him, obsession disguised as admiration. He saluted the flag, stood in formation, lived without fame, only to come home and find that nothing has changed. His uniform may be folded and stored away, but his guard can never come down. And what of his mother? Every knock on the door now carries a tremor of fear. Every late-night rustle in the alley behind the house is a ghost of that moment when safety became a memory. How many times has she looked at the security panel in the past few nights, checking it again and again, praying that it shows nothing at all? This is not fandom. This is a violation of humanity, and no mother should have to be afraid when her child comes home. No son should have to wonder if the lock on the door is enough. No artist, no matter how famous, should have to question whether his own walls will keep him safe from the people who claim to love him. And yet, this is where we are IT is in this reality that fans, the true ones, the ones who know that love means distance and respect, are beginning to speak louder. They are demanding better. Not just better security, but better culture, better understanding, a better world for the people we admire. Not one that traps them, but one that lets them live. Because maybe what Jungkook needs now is not a bigger wall, but a quieter world. A world where being loved doesn't feel like being hunted. A world where his mother can sit at the kitchen table without looking over her shoulder. A world where they can exist, not as stars or figures or legends, but simply as people. The silence from Jungkook himself has continued. He has not spoken about the incident publicly. Some say that is wise. Others say it is dangerous. But perhaps in this moment, it is not his voice we need. It is ours. It is the voice of fans, of agencies, of the media, of lawmakers, finally saying that the era of glorifying obsession must end. Let this be the last time a mother has to say, "My son just came home," and they already came for him. Let this be the moment we draw the line, not just in legal terms, but in moral ones. Let this be when we decide that admiration must come with limits, and love must come with boundaries. Jungkook has faced cameras, awards, cheers, and tears. But what he faces now, what his mother faces now, is more personal than any stage. It is a test of whether the world that claims to adore him will allow him to exist without fear. It is a test of whether fame, in all its light, can finally stop casting such dangerous shadows. And until that day comes, we must remember that behind every idol is a human. Behind every legend is a son. And behind that son, there is always a mother, one who never asked for the spotlight, but who now holds all the consequences of it. Let her grieve. Let her speak. Let her be heard, not in interviews or sound bites, but in the silence we choose to honor. The silence that says, enough. Because if we love Jungkook, truly love him, then we must also love the peace he has never been given. And we must finally demand a world where he can find I in the days that trail this moment. After the sirens have faded, after the Sasaeng was quietly removed from the scene, after the media began to feast on the shock and the headlines softened into background noise, the true impact of what happened doesn't disappear. It lingers. It settles like dust in the corners of Jungkook's home. It presses on the silence between his mother's footsteps. It breathes between each door she checks twice before locking. Because when something like this happens, the fear doesn't end when the intruder is gone. It begins. There's no instruction manual for how to rebuild trust in your own home. There's no quick fix for a mother whose belief in safety was shattered by a stranger with a fan account and a delusion. No matter how many security systems are installed, no matter how many apologies or arrests are made, the question remains suspended in the air. Will it happen again? Jungkook has faced the world stage with courage most people never have to muster. He has stood under blinding lights and deafening screams and made magic. He has poured his youth, his body, his voice, and his mind into a career that gave joy to millions, but the cost of that gift has come knocking at his door. Quite literally.